All right. Good evening, my friends. It's me, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon. I'm here tonight with Jessica Knock. We're hoping to have a couple of more panelists with us tonight, in particular, Frank Germano and John Barr. And we're going to be discussing what I think is going to be a really fun topic, the Gregorian Year in Review. Now, before we get into this Gregorian Year in Review, let's talk a little bit about what is the Gregorian Year. The Gregorian Year was introduced by Pope Gregory as an attempt at an algorithm to solve the calendar problem that plagues us all, particularly in this community. And this algorithm is predicated on the idea that the day begins at midnight, in the middle of the night, which is really kind of arbitrary, and that the 10th month of the year, January, the 11th month of the year, January, is somehow the first month of the year, and that the first day of the 11th month is the New Year's Day. And of course, you know, the reasoning behind all of this is kind of crazy when you recognize that, first of all, Rome decided to move the birth of Christ up to December 25th. And then in doing so, they had a very well-known feast called the Feast of the Circumcision that took place 8 days later on January 1st. And so to accommodate that feast, suddenly that became the new year. But it's very obvious that that's not the actual first month of the year. Because when you need a couple extra days to throw on the end of the calendar, you do that on the end of February, not the end of December. We can see very clearly that September means Sept, the 7th month, October, Oct, the 8th month, November, Nov, the 9th month, December, the 10th month, January, the 11th, Februation, the month for catching up on the extra days, the 12th month of the year. So we have this arbitrary and capricious calendar that's been imposed on the world by Gregory, and the world has accepted it. Not all the world. There's still places in the world that are on the Julian calendar and on other calendars. And of course, we as a people are coming away from the calendar entirely. Many people following the Zadok calendar, the Enoch calendar. We at the Sefer Publishing Group follow the astral calendar. We follow the astral calendar we believe is substantiated in Scripture, namely Genesis 1:14 and its progeny, talking about the sun and the moon and the stars also being given for signs, seasons, days, and years. Seasons being another word for the months of the year, because of course the season is going to be found in a month. So I want to welcome everybody that's in the chat tonight. Thank you, subscribers, for joining this channel and being here. You're an absolutely lovely group of people whose comments are always welcome. And the comments on the dig have been really substantial over the years. This is yet another version of the dig, as we're going to dig into some of the events that have taken place in the last year and the events that we expect to see take place in the coming year. So it turns out it's going to be pretty interesting. All right. So because we have a lot to talk about, I mean, we've got 365 days, right? That we could talk about. We're not going to cover all 365 days, but let's gloss over the top events. So let me get into this here, and we will, if I can only find where I am here, we will begin to take a look at our PowerPoint here, and let's go into this, right? The Gregorian Year in Review, a look back and a look forward. Okay, this is going to be another production of the Sefer Academy. You can visit us at sephiracademy.net. There's instruction going on as we speak. We have the 10 Devarim class up and running. We have the Ancient Days class up and running. The Hebrew Aleph Beit is available for download for the student who wants to get it. I just added 2 more piano classes to the Piano from Scratch class. And we're going to be adding additional classes coming into this new year, including the critical thinking class, which should be quite good. Jesse, I want to welcome you tonight. Thanks for coming to join the show.
Thank you. Pleasure.
The show we did recently with Justin Garcia was quite adventurous, and it was quite adventurous, and I thought quite good. And and it turned out that Justin is also preparing works, particularly works for children. He's preparing works for children. And the work that he did on Hanok, I mean, was that beautifully illustrated or what? Wasn't it just gorgeous?
Absolutely.
And so and the kind of stylization that he's using to really capture the essence of the teaching of Handel and present it to children, I think is a wonderful idea, wonderful concept. It's going places. And as I say, Sefer Academy is going to continue to expand our bailiwick to reach out to the homeschooling community with teaching that is going to be, of course, what we believe is much more adherent to the truth. So with that being said, we have this is a Sefer Academy production, but keep in mind that all the citations, if we get to any citations tonight in this review, are going to be from the Sefer Millennium Edition. You can visit us at www.sefer.net, where you can pick up your copy of the Millennium Edition in both regular print, as the one you see here, or in large print. Now, Jesse, you might have noticed that I think we have Frank Germano joining us here.
Brilliant.
And Frank, if you get your
No
audio
way.
working, I think
tell you,
you're
I hope so.
Yeah, here you are.
I got to figure out how to turn the camera around.
We got your voice.
I do not have technical difficulties. This is embarrassing.
Yeah, the technical difficulty. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I know you can make it work, Frank. I've got total confidence in you. There you go. Look at that. Yeah, that's beautiful. Where are you? That's San Antonio?
No,
Where is
we're on the road, kind of up above San Antonio, headed into the hills, Canyon Lake area.
Oh, so you're using your phone for your link here?
Yes, I am. Can you see me?
No, I can't. It's not difficult to reverse that. It's right there under the bottom of the switch. Just hit the little reverse switch and up you'll come.
I see that. No way.
And we'll see Frank driving in the dark.
All right, hold on. I don't see the reverse switch, but I'm looking for it. Did I switch it? I still don't see anything. I see you though.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, you know what, Frank? It's possible that you're not getting an image of you because it's too dark in your car because it's so late at night. But if that's the case, it's okay, brother. We just wanted to hear your voice and really to get your opinion. And of course, the audience doesn't know. Some people do. But I know you, Frank, and it's just, it's glad to have a fellow road warrior from the Musicians Wars. And
sure.
And of course, you did there's a pianist, Frank, you might know this guy. He's a guy out of Georgia who was the pianist who did all the backup recordings for the Rolling Stones. He laid down all the rock piano. Well, now he's an older man and he is a steward of forestry in northern Georgia. So he's the foremost expert on tree health, in particular trees that are indigenous to Georgia. And in that time, he's still playing the piano and still playing it very, very well. And, you remind me of him, Frank, being a great musician who went on to be a great engineer. And some of the projects that you've been involved in, of course, you and I have had a lot of discussions about some of these engineering marvels, really, and where we are. And so I just wanted to welcome you and to let people know that you're coming to us with a vast repertoire of experience. What are your, let me ask you this. What are your credentials in engineering? You got some academic. There you are. I see a little bit.
A doctorate of engineering.
You got a doctorate in engineering.
Penn State, yes.
Yeah, and what kind of engineering is that?
Well, that was specifically mechanical concentration, but I basically stayed in aerospace the majority of my after music career when I decided what would I be when I grew up, and pretty much concentrated on Tesla turbines, Tesla turbine power systems, Tesla pumping systems, but pretty much everything Tesla.
Yeah, that's great. That's going to be a good source of topic tonight, I think, particularly when we get into the looking forward portion of this program. Now, when you're talking about this, Frank, you heard what the professor of rocket science was saying to his students, right? Look, class, this isn't music theory. That's a joke.
That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
So anyway, we have hopefully John Barr will be joining us. I know John's been also wrestling with some technical difficulties. It's funny how these things come about for a bunch of really wildly genius people, but these things happen.
Well, this is crazy. I don't I really don't have such a thing as a technical difficulty. This is amazing. So I guess we are just going to be stuck with, it could be that I'm in 5G, so I can't believe it's that, but
No, what it is,
what it
Frank, is that you just have a low res image. Okay, that's what you got going
That's
on.
what I'm thinking.
You got a low res image, right?
Yep,
Now, if
I
you were
think
if you were
so.
to, if you were to turn on the, the light that's on the visor that your wife always uses to do her makeup while you're driving, you turn on that,
Oh, exactly.
and all of a sudden, boom, you're going to be
Exactly.
We'll see you. Yeah.
Well, for anyone that doesn't know what Frank looks like, just imagine Kojak. He looks quite similar.
Oh, there we
Got
go.
a visual.
There we go.
Okay. All right.
That's probably true.
Well, I'll tell you, when we look back at the year, the Gregorian year, that's what we're dealing with, this Gregorian calendar year, January through December. We're going to look back at, we're going to be looking back at some really interesting things that happened this year. And, for me, I've had a year that was really quite incredible, I have to say. It's been quite incredible. We did in Alaska, we have 2 seasons up here, Frank. We have winter, and then we have maintenance, and that's basically the 2 seasons.
You have
winter,
cold and cold.
Yeah, cold, and then fix what broke during last winter so you can make it through next winter, right?
Exactly.
And so we had a brilliant maintenance season this year, and we were able to get in our garden, we were able to get in our greenhouse, we were able to get in our generator shed. Of course, we had the difficulty of having to replace the septic tank, having to replace the well pump, having to replace the sump pump, and even the foundation timbers on our house. I mean, we had a lot of structural stuff that had to be done, but the maintenance was accomplished, and we got it accomplished for what was looking like it was going to be a mild, gentle, beautiful, kind of extra warm winter until 3 weeks ago, when we got 48 inches of snow, followed by, below zero temperatures, followed by 75-mile-an-hour winds. So now maintenance has reared its ugly head again. I don't know what it's going to turn into next year, but right, I know for sure I've got to fix the quad because I blew something on that, trying to move all the snow. But anyway, that's another story. But at any rate, take a look at this. Okay, let's get started here. All right. Now, I want to be very clear when we talk about the emergency that was declared in 2020, that we refer to that emergency as the protocol. Okay, the protocol. Let's don't refer to it in other terms. Let's talk about the protocol. The protocol that was introduced by President Trump, the protocol that was brought to bear in March of 2020, and the protocol that continued well in and throughout all of 2021. And in this protocol, we saw some really huge things take place in the world. And they're really, in my mind, they're huge markers, because you saw the right of travel condition. Now, you have to keep in mind that it used to be controversial that a government could restrict your travel at all by means of imposing a passport. Oh, well, I'm sorry, you can't travel unless you have a passport. In the United States Constitution, the right to travel is enshrined as fundamental. And when you have a right that is fundamental, the government cannot license what you have a fundamental right to do. And if the only thing they can license is something that otherwise would be criminal. And if they criminalize your right to travel, they violated the Constitution. This includes imposing a driver's license on you, or imposing any other form of state ID, or more elaborately, imposing a passport. And a passport that now, of course, continues to contain facial recognition identity, facial recognition points, and other data that is, locked in to this passport that you're carrying with you. And I know when we traveled into Britain this last time, well, we didn't even see a person. We came in. Okay, great. You got off the plane. Now go over here, stand here. Put your feet here. Yeah. Slide your passport onto this screen. Yeah. Look at the camera. Snap, presto, click, boom, bop. You're in Britain. Why did they not need to see my face? Because it's all digital, and they used facial recognition software to pinpoint my picture in the photo with my picture on the passport to say that is the same guy. I think it's 54 points of recognition. So this right of travel now becomes even more conditioned. Now we see, and Jesse, I think you can speak to this. Tell me that this is true, that the Oxfordshire Council has decided that they're going to disallow anybody's ability to travel outside of Oxfordshire without having registered and obtaining permission from the council.
That's right.
Have you heard this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the first council, and that's significant because it's where the university is based, famous Oxford University. There's only two, Oxford and Cambridge, and per household you can have up to 2 to 3 cars, but if it's 3 cars, that's 30 journeys a year. If it's 2 cars, that's 50 journeys with permission a year, and you've got to stay in your zone. If you're outside of your zone, it's £150 fine straight away. And so people are in uproar about this, and then they're saying there's different walking charges and fuel charges and so on, and that it's going to be implemented by 2024. But what they're saying, implemented behind the scenes, it's already there. It's just like the fiat currency. The venture capitalists has said that by December the 13th, they would start to roll that out in the UK. So it didn't come out on the 13th of December, but it is in the background. So when you go and you try and you set up a new account, they're saying, okay, do you want to sign up to the fiat? It's hand in hand, although we haven't launched it yet. So back to your point about these smart cities. Yeah, absolutely. They're doing it fast and furiously, but keeping it quiet because of the uproar. And the residents really have to scream and say no, but it's happening in other places as well that are prominent.
Mm-hmm. And you see with the social credit system, social credit score that China is imposing, that you can see a digital techno-fascism, a tyranny, a technocracy that is authoritarian in every aspect. And nobody has the right to say, hey, wait a minute, you don't have the right or the authority to govern these aspects of my life. This was never granted to you. No one ever consented to you being able to tell me that I can't go to Scotland, or I can't go to Manchester, I can't go up to Leeds. You can't tell me that. You have no right to tell me that. And, but we see every day that has gone on. This, I think, was the biggest marker in 2021, is that we saw the government asserting itself as absolute authoritarian and having the right to control every last aspect of a human being's life, including what you're thinking. The video that went viral last week about a woman in the UK being arrested for praying quietly.
Yeah, in her mind. Yeah.
Sure. And if I may, Steve, as you know, we just came back in from Romania beginning of the summer. So what I noticed, besides the chaos and the entire change, particularly in Germany. So let's say that we wanted to drive around Europe. It's not going to happen. They did try to push the. Okay. Oh, can I say that? I didn't know if I could say.
No, you can't say that. They tried to push.
No. They tried to push. They tried to push the thing on us. Of course, that's hard to enforce. But what they did, which I thought was pretty extraordinary, even if I was driving, let's say between Romania and Hungary, I would have to show a negative done within 24 hours. Now, let's say that was switched over to the United States, and it was a state-by-state situation. You really wouldn't have a problem because you could go into just about anything like a CVS or a Walgreens and get a rapid done. Try doing that over in Romania or Hungary or Czechoslovakia or any of those smaller countries. It was very hard for us even to get out with a test that was inside of 24 hours. So they've not only restricted you by trying to mandate something, the thing, they also get you by demanding that you have a negative. So whether or not you have the thing, you still need that negative. So how do you travel in between those countries? You know, Austria, Germany, Switzerland, whatever. At the border, you're going to need to show that negative test done within 24 hours. So it was extremely, you know, we were very lucky we found something at an airport, but I'm really baffled how people are freely traveling around right now.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Frank. And when you talk about, you're not just talking about thing, but also turning the test in and getting a result.
Correct.
In 24 hours.
That's the big one. That's the big one, because the way that was, at least this is what was represented to us at the airport. Let's say getting back inside of the United States, you need that done 24 hours prior to your re-entry. So let's decide we'll get the and we'll hop the next flight over. Let's say you're outside of the window, you ain't getting in.
Okay, hold on a second, Frank.
Test.
I got you.
Also, Stephen,
I got a little
John's trying
bandwidth.
to get in. John's trying to get in as well. He
Okay,
needs
hold
the code though, and I can't send that to him, so I'm not sure if he will get in unless he emails me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's see here. I will. We got some really interesting issues there going on. All right, let me go back here. Let me just try to get in here. You know, and of course, I mean, who knows what's going on, right? Okay, let's see here. Okay, John Barr. John, if you can hear me, just use the link that I sent, right? And if you would just tell him that, Jesse,
Yeah, it didn't come through, so he's asking if you can send it again.
Oh, well, okay. I can do that. I'm easy on that kind of thing. Send the link again. Yeah. So you know, but this is such a big point though, Frank, because first of all, you know that Fauci has admitted that the tests don't work. I mean, Fauci came out and said it. Oh yeah.
So for something that doesn't work, they're demanding something that doesn't work to prove that it doesn't work, so that you can't move freely between countries. That's really cute.
Yeah. Now,
you know, there's definitely a who's on first joke here somewhere, but I can't quite think of it.
Oh, Abbott and Costello. I was just trying to remember. We played that once. I was trying to remember who's on first, who's on second, who's on last. Absolutely, yeah.
We could probably turn this into a good one here if we wanted to.
Yeah. But they had us all in our homes, and that way everyone was conditioned. You had nothing else that you could do. You know, so that's how we were controlled.
Let me step in and let me give an observation. So I have now traveled between California, Nevada, all through the Midwest, the West itself, up into Michigan, overseas, back down Texas, all around Texas. And that's in, let's say, the past year. And what I have noticed from the time that we went into the restricted lockdowns and all this other stuff is not just a massive proliferation of 5G towers that have sprung up everywhere. Now, trust me when I say this, and it is an absolute certainty. We had plenty of coverage on 3G and 4G. And the joke used to be way back when we only had 1G and 2G, used to have to hunt around for cell signal, but you could still find it pretty much around any metropolitan area. Definitely around any city greater than 500,000 population. Not to mention now we have, you know, super cities like Los Angeles, New York City, Miami, multi-million. There is no reason to have this type of blanket density coverage for cell signal. There just isn't. And in some instances, you can find 4 or 5 towers within a mile radius. What are they trying to cover exactly? Because it is certainly not just cell service. Think about that one. The density of 5G coverage now, and it's headed for, let's call it 6G or 7G, but the density that we're being bombarded with EMF frequency is insane. It's uncalled for, and it's certainly not so that we can get better video. It's just in the time I'm talking to you, I have in just when I started this, I passed 4 or 5G towers, and I'm in a rural area.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So it's anybody's guess exactly what they're up to, but I think it's much more than just giving us good video coverage for 5G, because most of the time my signal is pretty poor. So how can that be when you've got this kind of blanket coverage?
John's here. Wonderful.
And some fun here tonight. Hey, John. How are you, brother? Good to see you.
Welcome, John.
I got to get you unmuted here.
John?
Yeah, well, we can't actually see him, and I can't hear him yet either because I can't get him unmuted because we're having all kinds of technical difficulties. How'd that happen, I wonder? No, I don't believe it.
You know, when that happens, there's a reason why for a distraction.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there's John. Okay, John, you're in. Okay, and Frank, now you're muted. See if you can unmute there, brother.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah, well, well, I want to thank Frank
I'm
for that.
unmuted.
There you go. Great discussion there, Frank, on the 5G, because I'll tell you, when you and I talk, there's a 7/100ths of a second delay when we're on a cell phone talking to each other across the country. Do you notice it? No, you don't notice it. Do I notice it? No, I don't notice it. However,
I'm here.
yeah, there you are.
John.
Thanks, John.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Loaded.
All right. Well, hey, John, we're going through it tonight, but we're going to talk about the Gregorian year, a look back and a look forward. And we're starting out, Frank and I and Jesse are talking about the abolition of freedom by means of this emergency condition. It's like, There you are. Hey, Frank. It's like when you talk about, let me give you an example. Okay, you got the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, right? The United States is a signatory to this treaty, as is 98 other major nations. And as these signatories, they have an obligation to follow this law, and it comports with the 1947 Nuremberg Code.
I'm getting feedback.
You're getting feedback?
Yeah.
Okay, try bringing your volume down a little bit. Bring your volume down a little bit on your computer. Just bring that down a little bit. That'll should stop the feedback. Okay, and so at any rate, when you talk about this Universal Declaration on Bioethics does not allow for diagnostic or preventative practices without informed consent. It just doesn't allow for that. Well, we have an emergency. Okay, we have an emergency. What's the emergency? We made everybody afraid. Well, I guess that's an emergency. But, the truth is that many of the state constitutions contemplated emergencies, and they have them articulated. Like if all of a sudden you got Russian troops in your major city and they're aggressive and they're attacking, this would be an emergency. And the constitutions prepare for that emergency. Do they prepare for an emergency when a well-known quack shows up in a white medical coat and says, I don't know anything about economics. I don't know anything about the functioning of a national economy. I don't know anything about anything, but I really think that anybody who potentially could get sick really needs to hunker down in their bedroom and go nowhere. Well, the nice diagnostic, it's like the insurance, I once got a letter from my insurance company and it says, Stephen, 48% of all accidents are caused by tired drivers. And I thought to myself, well, you know, Mr. Insurance Company, 100% of auto accidents are caused by drivers. If you could just eliminate the drivers, then you could continue to keep all the money without ever having to pay out a single dime for an accident, right? And it's the same thing here. You're a quack doctor and you think, what's the remedy? Well, the ideal remedy would be for you to lock yourself in a little, hyperbolic little cell there that just has oxygen pumped in and you never see anybody ever. Then you'll never get sick. Gee, then you don't have nothing to be afraid of. And that's what they did to the economy. That's what I'm calling the protocol. And as a result of that, the right to work was conditioned. You can't go to work. Why not? Because you're non-essential. Well, why are we non-essential? Because we're essential. We're in government. You're non-essential. You're not in government. We're essential. We're members of the World Economic Forum. You're not essential. You're not a member. Therefore, we can tell you you can't work. Therefore, we can tell you your business can't be open. Therefore, we can tell you we're going to close you and shut you down because you're non-essential. You know what is essential? Tesco is essential. Costco is essential. Lowe's is essential. You're not. Mom and pop who own the little store there, if it's a family business for the last 50 years, you're non-essential. And you can tell all your employees they're out of work because we're going to condition their right to work on their willing to accept medical preventative treatment without their consent on the basis of an emergency. All right, now let's talk about the right to free expression. Do we have, John Barr, a First Amendment right anymore in this country to speak freely?
Well, it's on paper, but it's probably not worth the paper it's written on. However, there's something called natural law. And when all else fails, people will do what they have to do. That's why it's dangerous. But yeah, the right is there, but certain people seem to have more right than others. And that's really, I don't know about other people, but I feel extremely threatened by what's been going on for the past 2 years. And and when I mean threatened, my level of threat comes from where I've been in my experiences, and it's very real. They say there's perceived threat and there's real threat. Well, I know the difference. And
you've been in some pretty extensive military conflict areas, isn't that right, John?
Yeah, in Asia and Europe.
Yeah.
And
including in Kosovo. Weren't you involved in Kosovo for a while?
I was, and it was there in the middle of an 8-month deployment that the light bulb really came on. And I decided I'm going to get another job. And I did. I wanted to go. My father was still alive. I thought I'd go back to Louisiana. So I looked for a park ranger job within a day's drive of him. And I applied for one 70 miles away and actually got it before I left Kosovo. And to me, this was a God thing, because when I got back to the States, they told me, you need to transfer back to the training regiment and take a detachment of instructors to Afghanistan to help train the Afghan army. And I said, well, I don't think so. And the guy said, personnel, we need to talk to the colonel. And I said, no, we don't need to talk to the colonel, because I don't work for y'all. I don't work for you anymore. I don't work for the Department of the Army. I have a piece of paper and another job under the Department of Interior. And I'm not even going to be in this state. So why don't you take my place? I remember telling that guy, why don't you take my place? Or better still, send your son.
Oh,
You know, I pretty much had it by then. I've been in seven wars or so, or rumors of wars. Some of them they won't tell you about.
Mhm.
We're in 80-something countries all over the world.
right.
And we don't know about those. So I went to some of those. I got good time. It counted for retirement. But I could see what was happening. We created the Kosovo problem. We created the ethnic cleansing in the former Yugoslavia.
And look what's happening today. I mean, it is on the verge of another explosive war.
And we're creating that. And
Think
how
about
I know,
that one,
how I
Steve.
know we created it in 1994, 93, I went to Italy to do a train up with NATO. And there this was the first computer war game ever done on computer. So we had two groups, North and South, and North was the aggressors and the South was defending, and NATO was playing their own role to learn how to intervene in this kind of conflict. This was 5 or 6 years before Kosovo exploded.
Mm-hmm.
Kosovo blew up in 1999. So by the time Kosovo turned on, I'm like, deja vu. We create a situation. We get in a country, NGOs, and embedded are certain other people. They're dressed up like NGOs, but they're embedded in their agents to start figuring out how to create all these internal divisions within a society, to change regime, to create a chaotic, violent problem within that country. And then we show up as the good guys, and we're going to bring you peace. We're going to quell the riot and divide the combatants and get NATO in there and the UN in there and everybody else in there and sort this out so these people can go back and live. And we're there like 20 years.
Yeah, we're the thing that never leave, right? That
And
never left.
we're looting their country.
Yeah.
And laundering money and all these other things are going on.
Yeah, and this is what we saw really emerge here in 2021, John. We really see it coming out clearly. Frank, you were going to add something on this, brother?
Well, John touched on something really interesting. So there are wars and rumors of wars, correct?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
where is that putting us right now? Because as Steve has brought forward several times, Jesus had a lot of things that he could have said, and he put that phrase, which I think just about everybody has jumped on, but does anyone really know what he meant, as in the days of Noah? So we know we assume what was going on pre-flood, and we know what was leading up to, which was literally all flesh had corrupted its ways. So just exactly how bad was it? Well, imagine all flesh. So the birds, the bees, the dinosaurs, every single thing had been corrupted. The end of all flesh was before God Almighty. And so
Yeah, I was reading that the other day. Yeah.
He wasn't playing around. This was a world-ending event. So whether it was a comet sent down, whatever the trigger was, the floodgates, the fountains of the deep, the floods opened up, the rain came down, but it was volcanic action. It was massive. It was tsunamis. God wasn't going to leave, a couple people hung out on that mountain and no, every single thing save Noah, the family, and what was on that ark was obliterated. And so jumping forward, as in the days of Noah, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So how extensive do we think that literally the cataclysmic events that we're about stepping into towards the end of the tribulation are going to be? You know, think about that one. And as John said, you know, is God repeating? No, the world is not going to be destroyed by water again.
That's right. It's not going to be a repetition. That's right.
Correct.
But the thing is, but I want to narrow our focus in a little bit tighter here. So I want to talk about what we've seen happen in 2020, 2022. And then we're going to talk about what we think is going to happen in 2023. Now, let's go into and let's deal with this thing that happened in February 24th of this year when Russia entered into Ukraine, a significant day in history. Now, Jesse, I want to start with you. When Russia entered into Ukraine, did you have an expectation that the UK was involved in this in any way?
Now, do you know, I was wanting to see the narrative of the government. That was the very first thing, what they were pushing, and then what was being said by the media in the mass. So they were my first concerns, to see how it would go, and then to see as it developed, because we started working together then, Stephen, anyway, so it was all evolving, and you had a great hest against Liz Truss, and actually everything that you assigned there that you said in advance, really regarding her, it came about, didn't it, in every way there. So I think for me, I was looking to see this in a different way, you know, wanting to see. I remember when this all started, do you remember how they used footage from a previous time that Russia had invaded invaded Ukraine, and it was older footage, and they were using false guns. I've written it down here. Let me just see where I can find it so I give you correct information. So I was looking at what they were what they were going to exaggerate about it and how it went. So I put down here, if you remember, Stephen, BBC, Fox, places like that, they were showing old Russian footage of Russia invading Crimea. Do you remember that? And
yes, I do.
Yeah, and also they were holding cardboard rifles. We did a program on this as well about the props that they were using in general for war. And so that made me think, okay, hold on and look at the wider picture. And I continue to use that to see what's going on, because I was seeing that they were controlling a narrative. And I always, in the back of my mind, even with this, Stephen, I consider, although it's not scripture, but Manzini's letters, Albert Pike's letters to Manzini, which is about the 3 world wars and the first 2, how they came about as they predicted. And I consider the aspect of Arabia and how the Muslim nations, the 10 nations come into it, you know, and so I hold that all there. And then when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, of course, it's an escalation. So it's no dismissal to what's happening with Russia and the Ukraine, but I'm trying to see the wider picture from where it is going.
Sure. And of course, what we see now is that, you know, we had this, you know, this so-called agreement that Obama had worked out with Iran, that Trump came in and said, that's no agreement. It's not respectable at all. I'm just going to can the whole thing and we can start from scratch. Well, he could can the whole thing and start from scratch, but there were, I forget what it was, 400 million in cash that had been transferred to Iran, supposedly. Of course, it really only ended up in a warehouse in London that was being managed by Chelsea Clinton, but that's another story, in multiple currencies. But there was a cash payout to Iran, kind of a cash buyout, don't get nuclear weapons. And of course, Benjamin Netanyahu over there in Israel has never stopped bomb, 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 bomb Iran. You know, I mean, he just keeps going and on and on and on and on. Well, Iran finally heard enough of it, and Russia finally heard enough of it. And so now you see this coalition that has formed as a result of this exacerbation in Ukraine shows Iran emerging now as a nation engaged in total war.
Wow.
See, Russia is a total war economy right now. And so is Iran a total war economy. What does that mean? That means you go to every factory in the country and you say, I don't care what you were making before, you're now making weaponry for the war machine. I don't care what you were doing before, you're now working for the army. I don't care, you know, you see, you just stop all that stuff like we did in World War II when we told all of the car manufacturers, You're not making Willys Jeeps anymore, or Hudsons, or Packards, or Fords, or Chevys. You're now building tanks, you're building Jeeps for the military, you're building trucks, you're building half tracks. And we weaponized and went to total war. Well, the United States is not in a total war footing. And for that matter, the United States can't get in a total war footing because we don't have any manufacturing or industry left in the country. We shipped it all out to China. Hey, could we get some more missiles? Yeah, let me call Xi and see if he can manufacture some more components so we can get our missiles restocked. Well, you just sanctioned Xi and threatened to kill him and threatened to invade his country. I don't think he's sending us any more components. What? We don't have any more components for the missiles? No, because they were being manufactured by a guy you made the enemy. And then what about the fuel for it? Well, we can't get the fuel either because that was coming from the other guy that you made into the enemy, right? When you go back to World War II, when we had our whole fleet sunk, we had, what did we have? 40 auto manufacturers going on in this country. We had iron being made, Bethlehem steel. We had rubber being manufactured in the country. You had the motors for automobiles being done in Windsor, Ontario. You had them being done in Cleveland. The 351 Cleveland, the famous Ford motor. These things were being done in this country. Now they're not being done in this country. So even if we were to try to go to a total war footing, we can't because we don't have the industry. We don't have the manufacturing. We have Boeing, but even Boeing has become a corrupted organization. So there's a great Netflix on that, by the way. I'm talking about what happened to Boeing. But when you see what's going on in Russia, Russia says, all right, we're in total war. Well, what does that mean? Since February 24th, the Russian invasion into Ukraine, to today, the Russians have gone into hyper production of tanks. And so 300 tanks that have been newly built since February 24th have been introduced into the Donbass, right? And the Sukhoi fighter manufacturer, which is located in the Russian Far East, has just agreed to put 100 Su-35s into Iran. Iran is developing missiles now in the tens of thousands. They're not just sitting around going, gee, let's have a couple of missiles. Maybe we can drop a few in Tel Aviv. No, tens of thousands of missiles are being built. Tens of thousands of drones are being built. And then, of course, what I think, and I'm going to ask Frank, your opinion on this, Frank, a little Sun Tzu for you here. When you see what happened in North Korea, where North Korea took 5 drones, went right over the South Korean border, and then buzzed around South Korea for 7 hours, including buzzing the president's house, buzzing downtown Seoul. And they sent out helicopters and they sent out F-15s and F-16s, and they had the THAAD system there, and they had the Patriot system there. And they couldn't touch these little drones. And the drones turned around and went back over the border. From my point of view, that is the signal right there. Sun Tzu has won the war. Everything else now is just going to be playing it out academically. Your take on it?
Well, kind of tangent with that for just 1 second. And you did a show on Babylon the Great. So we have Babylon the Great. We have that great city. We have the harlot. And I don't think at this point in time that anyone would disagree that Rome, or what we now call Rome, the Vatican, the Catholic Church spreading out throughout the centuries, but also the United States, we have all these things coming in play. And then there's this one point, Babylon the Great is fallen. God says it twice. So we know that it's destroyed, and it's completely destroyed, in a day. It's gone, and it's not going to be inhabited. So is that the United States globally, or is that Rome, the city, or is it a combination of both? But the way that the United States formed, the way that it has risen, the way that it has had global dominance, but also just the absolute insidious behavior of many of the leaders, the people, Hollywood, it's going to take a fall, the whole system, and it's going to get hit to the point where, everybody looks and, they're throwing ashes. They're in sackcloth. Wow, we can't believe it's gone. but it is gone in a day. So what do you think on that regard, Steve, as far as like where we are? Because something big is going to happen, and it's going to be, earth shattering, like in its entirety.
Well, now that you ask on that, Frank, I mean, I can tell you that, there have been, I don't know how many visions, the Dmitry Duduman vision, the Henry Groover vision, we were talking with Lisa Marie for the last couple of weeks, her visions, other visions I have heard about nuclear missiles going off in the United States. And, the problem is that there is no question in my mind that Russia has nuclear weapons and that they have significantly powerful nuclear weapons. I believe that the so-called volcanic explosion that took place on Tonga in April of this year was actually a nuclear weapon that was detonated, and it was the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated in the history of man. So before this, you had a nuclear bomb that the Russians had also detonated up in the Barents Sea. It was called Tsar Bomba. Tsar Bomba. That's what they called it. And it was a 538 kiloton device that they thought was going to split the earth in half. The power of that bomb was so ferocious, so huge, the largest detonation ever, until Tonga. Tonga, a professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, where, by the way, we were woken to that blast at 4:30 in the morning. The sound wave woke us up, got my dog barking, right? Knocked my sister-in-law out of bed. The University of Alaska Fairbanks, that professor estimated that the blast was 750 kiloton. If you look closely at that mushroom cloud, you will see, when you build a fusion weapon, the fusion weapon is built with, I don't want to call it a geodesic dome, but it has the panels on the bomb. And those panels on the bomb reflect the way that this bomb is going to detonate. And when you see a fusion bomb, there's a great picture of Kim Jong-un with a 60 kiloton hydrogen bomb. When you see those bombs, then you look at that mushroom cloud and its perfect symmetry reflecting those panels. That tells me this was a nuclear blast. This was an intentional nuclear blast. And there was even a videographer who showed a video showing a missile coming into the island before the detonation took place. So there's no question in my mind that the Russians have the most significant nuclear weapons on Earth. They're extremely powerful. They're not 1 megaton or 2 megaton or 200 megaton. At best, you have an 800 kiloton weapon. But 750 kiloton, the power and the enormity of that is just beyond the scope of comprehension.
Sure. And think about, Steve, they don't necessarily have to fire it. It could already be here. We've had open borders for well over a year, you know, and so how hard would it be to actually get the components, even the manpower in? There could be 1 million plus not so friendly people sitting on United States soil right now, you know? So it's not necessary now, I don't think, if they wanted to target major metropolitan areas that had key military significance. I don't think they need to fire a thing. It could already be sitting here.
Right. Yeah, very possible that that's the case. But if they were to fire something, I've seen the videos, multiple videos of the Kinzhal KH-41, the KH-52. These Kinzhal missiles are traveling at Mach 8, Mach 10, Mach 12, and the Sarmat, which successfully tested at Mach 15, and it's the largest ICBM ever built. This has the capacity to carry 15 150 kiloton nuclear weapons in a single missile. And then to MIRV, right? Then it MIRVs, right? This multiple reentry. And the multiple reentry, we used to play a game back in the 80s called Missile Command. I don't know if you ever played that. But basically you sat there with your little dial and you tried to shoot down the missiles as they came on the screen, because they would MIRV and then they would MIRV. And once they MIRV 2 or 3 times, you're going to get nuked. You're going to get blasted. That's the end of your game. Better get out another quarter. But you can see that the Russians have the hypersonic vehicles. We do not. And in fact, our ICBM fleet, and this is what really amazes me, our ICBMs travel at 0.65 Mach 0.65, not even Mach 1. And these weapons that we've developed back in the 60s, back in the 70s when they were built, they function on a 5.5-inch floppy disk drive. There hasn't been a one tested since 1992. We've fired a couple of sub-base missiles, but we haven't fired these from the silos. We don't even know if they'll come out of the silo. And even if they did come out of the silo, by the time a missile traveling at 0.65 of Mach 1 reaches the Soviet Union, they could fire 5 different times to hit the United States before that first one ever hits. And that missile traveling at 0.65, roughly 600 miles an hour, 500 to 600 miles an hour, is going to enter an airspace where an anti-missile system deployed coming at them at 9 or 10,000 miles an hour with the S-500 system, that's what they're going to face for defense. So the chances of the United States being involved in a nuclear inferno right now are extremely high. And I'll say this is why I believe it's high. First of all, you have a leadership that is completely irrational. They cannot see that, they cannot understand that 2 + 2 is 4. They think that if it comes out of their mouth, it's true. And this just simply is not the case. And so they can't, like I heard General Petraeus get up and start talking about this, that, and the other thing. And he is so completely ignorant and totally wrong about the weapon capacity that he's facing. He doesn't even understand it. He has no idea. And so, he's one of our top advisors. He's going to be telling Biden, oh yeah, they like to think they have technology, but they really don't have technology. Well, when you find out that they do, it's going to be behind the big mushroom cloud, So the thing is that you have guys like Blinken. I call the administration wink and blink and nod. Wink and blink and nod, and they're out there. They're out there doing this stuff, and they're just like, okay, well, we're not going to take it. Let's put another 100 billion in there, and let's move some more arms in there, and let's put a no-fly zone over Ukraine. This is the thing when they came in with this Patriot says, we're going to put a no-fly zone over Ukraine. They put a Patriot missile system, and Putin's reaction, that obsolete technology, we're going to blast it off the earth the instant it's deployed with Kinzhal missiles that they're not even going to see coming. Now, once that happened, this is why I'm saying the war was won with North Korean drones free flying in South Korea. Once that happened, you see that the little dog that whose tail wagged, that North Korea was able to eclipse the best American technology, the THAAD systems, the Patriot systems. They were able to go in there with these little drones for 7 hours. 7 hours. And there was nothing that South Korea could do about it. Well, what does this tell you? All of the American technology is obsolete, antique, out of date, not up to snuff. Now what's going on, and this is the big deal for me, what was the grounding of the B-2 bomber about? Did Russia hack their software? What was the grounding of these F-35s about? Did Russia hack the software? I mean, these are big questions. The Russians have absolutely zero fear of the F-35. In fact, I've read in the Russian press, they said, any F-35 that enters into Russian airspace, we will put it into the ground without firing a shot. We'll just cripple its software, down it goes, and that's the end of it. We haven't talked about the use of strategic EMPs. So the long and the short of it, Frank, and I'm going to turn it back over to John here. The long and the short of it is that we stand at the brink of a nuclear holocaust.
Mm.
And unless the leaders back off, unless they back off and then try to restructure their thinking, get away from their propaganda for a few minutes and say whether I'm right or I'm wrong, and am I going to be able to live with my decision when there's no more London? Am I going to be able to live with my decision when there's no more New York, no more Boston, no more Washington, D.C., no more Philadelphia? Can I live with my decision then, saying, well, I was right and they were wrong? Are you going to be able to live with your decision? And, and the Russians are at a point right now where they have said, look, we had a problem with Ukraine. America doesn't get the problem because they were part of the problem, just as John mentioned about Kosovo. John, tell us, when you saw that NATO planning for Kosovo and planning this idea of chaos, did you see a similar model going down in Ukraine in 2014?
Oh, I can see them all the way back to Vietnam, because we've been doing this same scheme over and over again. What we see is Orange Revolution, Spring Revolution, Arab Revolution, Egypt. We took down all these. All of these are a plan that was it is the brainchild of Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Ah, yes.
That name ring a bell?
Oh, yeah, sure.
This guy is the founding father of a plan when he was working for one of the presidents.
Jimmy Carter.
That's right. To how to invade the Middle East. I'll just call it that. And so the plan is what we've been seeing, that we get inside, mainly using NGOs, and infect the interior of whatever our target country is, to bring down regime change. And what we want is a regime, our government, a regime that will cooperate with us in the name of democracy. But we're not a democracy.
And neither were they. And neither are the countries that we imposed this stuff on.
They keep saying this, we're a democracy. And what is the name of the government of South Korea? The Republic of South Korea. It's not the democracy of South Korea. So this is a fallacy. But anyway, those kind of things are exported into these third world countries, if you will. That's why the Russians stopped all this stuff coming into their country. They know about this. So they cut it off. They even threw the Mormons out because they're a front for espionage.
Wow.
And they threw them out when they began threatening members of their Mormon thing that wanted to leave Mormonism. You don't threat Russians in Russia. You get in trouble. So anyway, let me go back to some things. You can go back and read Brzezinski's plan. It's got to be somewhere on the internet. And but that's what we're seeing, and they perfected it. I did a research paper on the CIA operations for some course, and it was very interesting because we have file on every country in the world, basically. This is what analysts do. And so we know in country A, who are all the wealthy people? Who are all the professors in the universities and schools? Who are the educators? Who are the lawyers? Who are the doctors? Who are the politicians? And then what kind of natural divisions are walking around in their society, whether it's men, women, gay, straight, black, white, natives of South America versus the descendants of those from Spain. And Catholics, Protestants, all this kind of stuff. They have a whole file on there. So they know where they can start widening cracks inside the society. And all this is based on the question, if we had to go to war with that country for some reason, what's our plan? So there's a file about on every country of what we would do. Now, this is smart. This is a plan ahead. But you can also use it, which has been going on, evil. This is knowledge. This is the knowledge of good and evil. There's some smart reasons to know this about other countries, because they do that with us if they're smart, just as a precaution, because things change. But then it can be turned into a weapon. That's what we see now.
Right. which we
We
have
got
seen,
war
right?
after war after war. And, it's occurred to me after a while, I'm like, I thought these wars would be over when the Soviet Union went down. And we're friends now. So what's going on? We're starting a war if we don't have one.
Well, it's
And
like that one.
I'm in those things. I know what's going on. I'm
Well,
like,
Pause
wait a
on
minute.
that one, Steve. As John just said, good and evil. Well, if memory serves, the translation of that is function and dysfunction.
That's
So-
good.
Right? So function or dysfunction.
Ability and
So-
disability.
What really happened back then, and how does that correlate to what's happening now? Because
Well-
Steve, you did a great show just a week ago, I think it was, and we've been talking about this off and on for a while with the thing and what it might be doing. But somehow, some way, something went really awry back in the garden. Eve chose function and dysfunction. Adam joined in, which I think was out of, oh no, she did it. Oh, and he didn't want to see it her alone. And he did too. And then here we are. But then something else happened in that garden. And just briefly, just some questions. So who did Cain marry? How did he instantly get a wife? What, did Adam and Eve have other kids? Because Genesis doesn't say that. They just jumped to Seth. Who was Cain afraid of? Oh,
That's
no.
the big question. We've had this question in front of us now for
Yeah.
a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the narrative, and John was the one who raised it, by the way, when you look
Yeah.
at the narrative, you have Cain and Abel. Seth isn't born. Seth isn't going to be born for a
Right.
while. When Cain is kicked out and he says, everybody's going to want to kill me. Who's everybody?
Who?
Adam and Eve? Who's everybody?
Adam
that's
and
gonna
Eve.
want to kill Cain?
Adam and Eve definitely should have bopped him over the head with something there, but he is legitimately afraid to the point. Now he's also face to face with God right there.
Right. Sure.
This isn't a second or third hand event. He's right there and he's like, they're going to kill me. Who's they? Where? How many others? Where'd they come from? Etc. So then we have function, dysfunction, good and evil. And what exactly is going on with the DNA there? Where are these other people coming from? Why isn't Cain mentioned in Adam's genealogy? It jumps to Seth, Adam, Seth, up through. What happened there? And where do all these other people come from to build a city? Let's say that's,
Yeah, and all these guys would say, well, I'm going to go out and seize the city. From who? Who's
Really?
the city you're going to seize, right? Who was Nimrod ruling over? I'm going to go out and seize the city, right? I mean, these are they're very large questions in terms of the whole in Scripture. But
Sure.
Coming back to where we are here on 2023, 2022, 2023.
Sorry.
But it's a great point, Frank. It's a really great point because I think this stuff is starting to emerge too, right? But I wanted to ask Jesse here. Now, Jesse, I've got the slide up here. Sanctions backfire on Europe, Canada, and the U.S. Now, we were in the UK when the sanctions were beginning to backfire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us, is it true that what they said that your electricity bills like tripled?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're in the winter. We're suffering the consequences of that. So yeah, absolutely. And they're bringing in all these back things saying, oh, we're going to help you here and there. But you don't see that really coming through. It is an issue of survival. So that hasn't worked. We're just seeing it's beginning. This is going to be a cold winter here. This has been the coldest couple of weeks that we've had. So it's just the start, Stephen, of it. But
sure,
they have tripled. So you're talking about hundreds a month for electricity.
Right there with what Jess just said. So we all know energy, and without some form of energy, be it natural gas, propane, electricity, etc., and however it's manufactured, it's also a control.
Yeah.
So notice the verse in Revelation where they're talking basically how expensive everything is going to become.
Mm-hmm.
That you're basically going to have a day's wage for a loaf of bread.
Yeah, high inflation.
When you break down the energy or the energy delivery, the supply, everything goes up because something has to move from point A to point B to get something to the consumer in the end. You have the businesses potentially priced out of business because of just the means to keep the lights on, et cetera. And this starts compounding, and it does hit a tipping point. And if you do the math, it's not that short of a time. It's actually pretty quick that if you upset one part in that delivery chain, everything goes nuts. And then it compounds the next season, let's say the production of food, crops, grains, feeding the cattle, et cetera. It's watering the cattle. Once you upset that energy cost and make it high enough, it makes it almost impossible to rebound. And then you just have not just hyperinflation, massively hyperinflation, where you can't even afford to buy food if food is even in the store to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's
And
where we're headed
other
now.
things. Yeah. And it
that's-
happens
that-
very quick.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing now. And I mean, when we were there, we saw the electricity prices go up. We saw heating prices go up. It's very well known now that many people in Britain have to choose between heat and food.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the condition that's going on. It's much worse in Germany, much worse in Austria, much worse in Poland. And the thing is that it was Liz Truss, who 1 minute after the Nord Stream pipelines detonated, sent a text over her open source iCloud iPhone to Anthony Blinken saying, "It's done. It is done." How would she know within 1 minute that the Nord Stream was blown up,
Yeah.
that it had been done? And why was she reporting to the American Secretary of State that this was the case? Because
that
she
was
was
planned.
the one that ordered it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That
And
goes
That was
back-
planned, Steve. And if you look at the layout of that, it's no different than some of the key pipelines in the United States. It does not take a rocket scientist, a little bit of pun there, but it does not take too much to think, where do you have to plant something, an explosion, to disrupt and cause the most damage? And there that thing is, in the one spot where it had to be hit, taken out. Now, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
I know. I mean, the motive is there, the logic is there, the impetus is there, and the result is there, and the admission is there. So when we see this, what's happened? Well, we've seen, number one, record profits have come into Russia. Number two, their ability to supply oil and gas has not gone down, but has actually gone up because they have willing buyers in the Far East, i.e.
Exactly.
China has increased its appetite 2.5 times. India has increased its appetite 4 times. And what you're talking about here, Frank, you make a really good point, that when the supply chain is disrupted, right? So you have natural gas and you have oil. So this is used for heat. It's also used for manufacturing. It's also used for electric generation. When that stuff is gone and you deprive it, then the stuff that results from electric generation, the stuff that results from heated homes, the stuff that results from manufacturing facilities using it, that stuff disappears too. So BASF, the largest industrial giant in Germany, has practically done everything but shut down because they have no natural gas. And so these sanctions erupted as a backfire in Europe. They could easily see it was coming. And instead of backing away and moving away from the sanctions, saying Biden can sanction what he wants, we're not going to respect it. Instead of doing that, they doubled down with even more rhetoric, more sanctions, more nonsense. Now you're seeing the Russian commitment now has been made permanently to China, permanently to India, and this is going to go on for a generation. So you're going to see China, who has all of the American industrial base, and India, who has what's left over, and Indonesia, which is also a competitor in that field. They're going to be enjoying cheap natural gas and oil, while Western Europe has none. And under those circumstances, what do you think next year is going to look like in terms of the countries with an increasing GDP, the countries with an increasing manufacturing and industrial capability, the countries who, because of their increased industrial and manufacturing capability, are going to be able to wage war and to engage in total war at a much higher level than those countries who don't? What's it going to look like in a year? It's going to look twice as bad next year as it looks this year.
Yeah.
And as Frank was saying here, and I think this is an important point, we talk about hyperinflation. This is ultra hyperinflation. This is skyrocketing. This is Weimar Republic hyperinflation. Okay.
It's going to be beyond that, Steve, because if you just disrupt, let's say, corn and wheat, which let's just say just the United States. Well, it's more complicated than just, okay, well, some people aren't going to get some. This spills over to what is on hand, can't be shipped, it spoils, etc. And then you can't just catch up with the next growing season. And that's just with perishables. Now you're talking, let's say, a disruption of fuel. Well, that is catastrophic. I mean, people do not realize how precarious the electric grid is. The fuel, well, what powers the electric grid? In most cases, it's still coal. Some of it is, solar and wind. Not much, not much. You look at Hoover Dam, for example. Well, they had record, let's call it a drought, but the solar couldn't keep up with the demand. The lake was drained to the point where it's really low. And that lake, that power grid supplies some 40 million people. Well, if you have disruption in power across the United States and then put that global, what does that mean for the average person? Think about that. We're at a point right now where it is dangerously close to like global shutdown. It really is.
Put here in our screen here, Frank, as I put here in the screen, anticipating economic collapse.
Right.
Economic collapse. And there's been forecasting on this too, that you have a fiat currency that's really nothing more than the debt instrument. The debt instrument has swollen to 31 trillion on the books, 74 trillion off the books, several quadrillion in terms of its derivative liability. And these debt instruments, which are the UK pound, the Canadian dollar, the American dollar, the European euro, the Japanese yen, these debt instruments are now entering into a catastrophic phase. They're entering
absolutely.
The spiral wherein the interest rates have to keep going, or the inflation is going to keep going. The interest rates will never be high enough to catch the inflation rate. And when the interest rates go up, they collapse the economy behind it. This is the death trap we're in right now. And it's going to lead to a sudden implosion of these currencies going to zero, I believe.
Sure.
Now,
well, think about this, Steve. And we can say this a couple ways, but let's just say Antichrist, the individual, to rise to power. He's rising to power with solutions. He's not coming on as the warlord. He's coming on as peace, peace, peace. Hey, I've got the way to make this good. Not even taking into account AI and call it the image of the beast. But Antichrist is coming on, let's say the Satan empowered individual.
Okay, sure.
Is coming on the scene as somebody that offers solutions. He's got the way to fix what just happened. Now we see the dollar, we see the pound, we see basically money collapsing. Well, we already saw what happened with Bitcoin. That wasn't too smart for a lot of people. But there has to be something that comes on the scene suddenly, drastically, as a solution, which is, let's say, a global currency, which could only be done electronically. And the reason that I qualify and say that, it has to be something that can be enforced. And if you don't have that mark, that identifier, you can neither buy nor sell. See, we keep pushing, the thing as I think it's a definite part of it. And I think we're going to see some really strange things happening, which aren't going to be too good. But there has to be something which is tied to that financial system where you can no longer buy nor sell if you don't have this. And that can only be some type of a digital currency.
Yeah,
and it's global.
And that's what Jesse was saying earlier, that the UK has already rolled this out. It just is being implemented slowly. Some of the banks in the United States have already rolled it out. They're settling accounts using a digital currency now. And, so here we are at this point, and we can see, I'm showing you here on the screen, when we talk about anticipating an economic collapse. Right now, the mortgage market in the United States and the US housing market is in a free fall collapse. So is the auto market. The auto industry is in a free fall collapse. Interest rates are the highest of the century, and inflation is nonetheless skyrocketing. They're talking about a 40% increase in 1 month, right?
Yeah.
So this is some of the stuff that we saw in 2022, really an entire paradigmatic shift as we moved away from Western freedom into Western tyranny.
Yes.
I mean, that's what's happened. We've lost, well, the one thing that happened in 2020 that was pushed out further in 2021 and cemented in 2022, we went from being the free West to being the tyrannical West.
That's right.
And
Don't forget that one thing, I'm going to call it Chrislam, but I think it's much more than that. So here's the Popey boy announcing a merger of two religions, Islam and Catholicism. And right behind that is, I'm not sure, Steve, is it Buddhist or is it Hindu? There's supposed to be three of them on that mount, or the area, let's call it, that are going to be merged.
Well, I
So
think
now,
the belief that the Pope is coming forward with his true faith is Gaia, earth worship, creation worship. Man is God and is capable of changing the climate. Climate change is the foremost moral issue on earth because the earth is God. And so and this is coming from a Pope who begs the question, is the Pope Catholic, right? This guy
also, I'm just waiting for that alien invasion. I mean, it's got to be coming. It's got to be. Somewhere out there, they're going to say ET is back. Mark my words, folks, 2023, they're going to announce ET's back. Now, you got to remember, they are not our friends. They're also not, well, I guess you could call them extraterrestrials. That's fair. That's fair. I'll give it that much. But they are certainly not friends. They do not like us. They never did.
Right. Well, there's a reason why. Now, since we've gotten into that, okay, let's break into Dmitry Medvedev's predictions for 2023. John, let's start with you. Okay, so Dmitry Medvedev predicted just recently, he published this on Gazetia in Russia. An American civil war would result in the separation of California and Texas into separate and independent states and the creation of the Union State of Texas and Mexico. Okay, John, what do you have to say? Is Medvedev on this or off?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Medvedev is a pretty smart guy. His foundation is finance. And I figured we're going to have a civil war sooner or later about 7 years ago. And Texas, when you talk about Texas, Texas was a republic before they were a state.
Yeah.
And they have certain clauses in their state constitution that sort of would allow them to leave and become a
if
separate
memory
republic.
serves, John, Texas is the only state that is granted per its constitutional charter and on becoming a state that it can secede from the union at any time it chooses to vote to do so without
Something
any
like
repercussions.
That would be like a referendum. You mean you can have a referendum and
if they could vote it, they could do it. And now living down here 6 months or so, the economy is strong enough. I want to say, I know California is up there globally as a state, as other nations. Texas is not that far behind. It could pull it off financially.
I don't know what all their constitution says now, but in the beginning of all that, before they came into the union, I think they had something like they're going to maintain a 12-mile coast, just like a United States, not just 3 miles for the state and 12 miles for the coast. They also had a right left in there to maintain a navy. I don't know what that means today. They also had the right to maintain the Texas Rangers. And the Texas Ranger thing says that if somebody commits a crime in Texas, whatever that is, and Texas decides to go get that person, they don't care where that person is in the rest of the United States. They don't care about any jurisdiction Texas Rangers will go get that person and bring him back.
Go try catching a fish without
One of
a
the most
fishing license
famous
down
Texas
here.
Rangers that I know about
Yeah, right.
in Louisiana, from Louisiana history, is the Ranger that killed Bonnie and Clyde.
Mhm.
Bonnie and Clyde made a mistake. They had that guy. They got the drop on him, and they didn't kill him. And he came back across from Texas into Louisiana, and they set up an ambush, and they killed him right on the
Wow.
shot that they killed him. A Texas Ranger did that in the state of Louisiana. He didn't ask anybody either.
Sure.
So, but anyway, Texas has some unique things that they protected themselves somewhat when they came into the Union.
Sure.
And
Well, you also have to look at Texas as an oil producer. So I mean, well, let's not even get into the shutdowns, but
Texas has a history that did some things that other people didn't do. They made it against the law for a Native American to live in Texas. We're just tired of you. Everybody get out. And they literally get out. And they had to get out and go somewhere else. Now, has that changed? I think so. I know some people that lived over there that were one guy.
Well, I think Medvedev is, there's a couple of premises here. Number one, first premise is, will there be a civil war? Now, that's a big question. Now, we're already seeing, and the civil war can happen really in a couple of ways. One is you could have an aggressive civil war. That is to say, someone initiates a civil war. Another way you can have a civil war is a happenstance civil war. Society collapses around you. There is no governance. The dollar has gone to zero. There's no governing authorities. And now there's a question, who will be the authority if all the governing authority is gone? This was the problem in the Soviet Union, right? When the Soviet Union fell, you had a system that was controlling all of the Soviet socialist republics. Suddenly it was gone as a governing authority. Now what? Well, this is where we got Ukraine. This is where we got Georgia, and Armenia, and Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and so on and so forth, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Belarusia. We got all this because the SSR collapsed and the governing authority was gone. Now, if the governing authority in DC is gone by means of economic collapse or military destruction, now there's a vacuum. There's no governing authority, in which case I think you would see Texas begin to immediately assert itself as a governing authority. And it would not just be its GDP, Frank. It would be the GDP of Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and a whole bunch of other states in that center bastion that would join themselves to it. And now California, on the other hand, is going to have a real civil war happening because California will try to assert itself as a liberal paradise, right? And it'll be, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle coalition that will try to form and say, we're the woke leaders of this thing. And they have no idea how angry the American populace that happens to live under that governance is. And those guys are going to turn against them with an absolute vengeance. That will turn into it'll turn into a bloodbath, big time bloodbath. And in addition, there's one other component I want to throw into this. You cannot leave out the Mexican drug cartel culture. The Mexican drug cartel culture is already functioning with alacrity over the border with no difficulty because there's no border. So they just swing out and do whatever they want. And now you're going to see that these cartels are going to make a play. I think the cartels are going to make a play for governing authority in the LA basin and probably in Phoenix as well, and maybe as far as Albuquerque. But you're going to see these cartels reach out, and that expansion is going to reach right over the border. So these things I think are very interesting that Medvedev has put this out. Now, let me ask you, Jesse. Now, you heard Frank bring it up earlier about Antichrist rising up, who is going to be the guy with the solution, right? The Antichrist is not a guy who's going to make war, but rather the guy who's going to make peace with the solution. So is Elon Musk a candidate?
That's a good question, isn't it? Do you know, with me, rather than considering individual people, I see traits. I would say that's the best thing to say, okay, it could be that way. I do know this, Stephen, that 2023 at some point will be the year that that is revealed, because if we're going my timeline by event 201, that was in October 2019, then we're coming into a 3-year mark around 2023. So that would mean midpoint tribulation. So then that would come about. And I think we're going to be seeing the revealing of that. He is definitely a contender. There are many contenders, but I've learned just to not focus on one name or one person, but see the different traits to what it could be. And what I'm more focused on, Stephen, is the fact, like what we do in the programs, seeing the seals opening up, 1, 2, 3, 4 about to happen. And that's my prophetic navigator or indication of where we're going with this.
Now, what is this event 201 you're talking about?
I didn't hear what you said, sorry.
What's this event 201 you're talking about?
Where they simulated everything that we have been through, that you've encapsulated in your introduction that we didn't read. So from the conditioning of wearing the mask, from preconditioning before we got the snake bite, the lockdowns, the 6 meters apart, all that type of thing, that was all simulated. What would happen if a national and global crisis had happened by all the people that now we know as common, Gates and so on, these names, Musk, all these people that before you wouldn't know. And now
hold on there, Jess. Pause on that, because Steve has brought this up before too. So we all know the woman clothed with the sun, the stellar event that happened in 2017. Am I correct there, Steve?
Yeah, September 23rd, 2017.
Okay. So we have a ticking clock. A ticking clock. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. So we have an event that started, that was prophesied, that is extremely rare, and we started a clock ticking and moving forward, and here we are at 2022. So what events have transpired since then? Well, we have the craziness, we have the lockdowns, we have global events, not just, one country. This affected the entire planet.
Yeah.
We have people rising to stratospheric wealth. We have influence from social media. We have all of this stuff, which I think AI is lurking. I think it's active, to be honest. But we have AI, which what happens? What does the Antichrist do? He causes the image to speak. And everybody kind of goes, wow. Okay. So we have a supernatural, or let's say a Satan empowered individual, causing an image to speak, of which the whole world goes, wow. And we have the mark, which must qualify and be something that if you don't have it, you're not part of the in crowd. You can't buy nor sell. So we have all these events from the 2017 sign in the sky moving forward to now. In other words, have we entered into the tribulation, and we're just waiting to see the major events? Because as far as I'm aware, one of the major events is going to be a global war, because once we have the 4 horsemen riding, basically 2 billion on this planet are gone. So
yeah,
think
that
about
is
that.
right. And here, when you're talking about the third horse, the red horse, right? Behold, the red horse. And when we talk about the red horse riding, keep in mind that many people believe that we are in World War III right now, but we're in a different kind of war. It's not being fought like World War II was being fought. This one's being fought economically. This one's being fought in a cyber war. This is being fought with there's a whole lot of covert operations going on. There's a tremendous amount of psyops that are being used to win this war, rather than just the mere killing of people. I mean, and you can imagine with the use of EMP, for instance, it's possible for a nation who has an effective EMP to completely obliterate the infrastructure and its capability to function in modernity without killing a single person.
Yeah.
We have the natural disasters, okay, and that could be anything. That could be La Palma, that could be the ring of fire going off. That could be Yellowstone. That could be a whole bunch of things that take out a lot of people. And my bet would be more on natural disasters around the planet at the same time, because Jesus did say earthquakes in diverse places. So we know that there's natural disasters happen. We could have the thingy taking out people. We could also have a lot of mutations, because here's another good one for all three of you. One of the verses in there says that a significant number of people are taken out, killed by the beasts of the field.
Mm.
Well, I don't think we have enough bears, lions, tigers, even Komodo dragons tossed in the mix to take out too many people. So something else changes there. And could this be part of these, as in the days of Noah, they played with DNA of all creation?
Right. And when you mentioned that earlier, Frank, about the DNA being played with. Now,
Sure.
Think about this from a technological view, and I want to get your take on this because you're a Tesla guy. One of the discussions that kind of came up was that, the UK has a backup plan for power in the UK by producing Tesla generators. So, and you mentioned to me immediately that if they were doing that, people would be getting electrocuted while they were stood on the street.
See, the problem there is, and boy, 25 years ago, we had an option to do that. We were politely told don't. And from anybody that's been in the technology field long enough, when the men in black, and they're real, tell you don't do something, they don't give you options at all. There is no question in your mind that if you don't play ball the way they want you to play ball, you'll just disappear, and so will probably most of your family. So the Tesla magnifying transmitter, which is what everybody's trying to mistakenly say, Tesla activated it. It was 1903, 1905, and he turned it off, and he kept it off. Tesla, with all of his smarts, let's say, his intelligence, never fought. He didn't go back. He didn't play with it. But I think he also knew, and he did have at that time over $150,000 from J.P. Morgan. He just walked away from it. And I think it's because he knew they could weaponize it. And it also could be, you have to also remember this, that wasn't just power, that was communication, that would have been video, that would have been anything. And I think Tesla also realized that could have been mind control, which is where I think 5G is headed, and a whole bunch of other even worse things.
The thing is,
if the
Frank,
Tesla magnifying transmitter was turned on, to answer the question, it transmits, or I shouldn't say it transmits, ultra high frequency, first off, very little resistance anywhere on the planet. You put a rod into the ground and at that time a series of vacuum tubes, and you could draw off power. So it's reversed. Right now we dump to the ground. In Tesla's case, anywhere on the planet, the whole planet was basically resonating now, and anything tuned to that resonant frequency could draw the power.
All right, now stop right there for a second, Frank. Now stop there for a second, because what I'm trying to bring out in you is this. Consider, if you will, the days of Noah, before Noah. That was there a technology that was based on this same idea that would allow people to harness the electricity in the air, and even to create flying machines that were operating on electricity, or to power lights so that they get in long caves to do the paintings and the pyramids and so forth?
I think they had that up even shortly after the flood, because you have to remember, I think Ham found ancient writings, and all of a sudden Ham's bloodline start doing some really spooky stuff. Okay. And Ham's bloodline is Egypt. And you look at the layout, and if you remember that video that I sent you on the expanding Earth, even in its expanded right now, current size, all those pyramids are laid out along, call it an energy grid. They were literally planned that way. So the whole Earth, with those points of reference, which really, if you look at a dodecahedron and put it inside the Earth, those points would represent the points on a dodecahedron. And that's basically just an inverted triangle with sides pointing out. It's interesting that the Hawaiian island, the main island, Hawaii, that volcano is on one as well too. But those pyramids were situated in such a way to allow and I like Christopher Dunn's theory, I don't think it was chemical in a microwave. I think they had crystalline structures. And if you look at most of the rocks, granite, quartz, obviously you have electrical capability there. But in size, and think of the weight, the angle and everything, I honestly think they had free electricity everywhere.
Boom.
Everywhere.
Now, if they had free electricity everywhere and they had this capability of adjusting the frequencies, is it possible that the DNA of every bee, every bug, every bird, because this is how scripture describes it.
Oh,
yeah. Every living creature, that was this the methodology for manipulating the DNA of these creatures?
You have hit on something that worries me and that I have looked at for over a decade. But sound, we all know that an opera singer can shatter a glass. That is just resonance. If you take extremely low frequencies or ultra high frequency, you look at the work from Dan Winter as an example. Well, he was terrified of 5G because he identified several frequencies that could alter your DNA. And that's just capability of 5G.
Yeah.
So it's not just, well, we'll call it vibration, but it could be sound. It could be light. All right. Light has vibration, tuned light. It could be music. I mean, I'm not going to say it's as nefarious as, I believe it was Goebbels that demanded A440 concert tuning, which they said was going to agitate the population. So everything had to be tuned to A440. And it does. It does. Yeah. Just 8 cents down to A432 is amazing. And you can do Bach, or you could do Beethoven, or you could do anything and tune it to 432, and it just feels different. It feels okay, better.
Right.
Same with 528. So I think we're being bombarded electromagnetically. I think we're being bombarded with sound. I think lighting. I think it's a whole combination. But when I first started, when I was talking about 5G, that's the one that scares me, because if you look at the power that they're dumping into those 5G antenna systems, it's enormous. It's enormous.
Right. And the bandwidth is enormous, and the frequency. We had Mark Steele, Jesse and I had Mark Steele and Kate Shemirani on Eating Wild Honey and Locusts. And we had very good discussions. And Mark was also saying very similar things about the capability of this bandwidth, about how really it is weaponized. It's weaponized. And that
started out that way.
Yeah, it started out that way. It's kind of the only thing you can conclude about it. So anyway, so what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to kind of wrap this up now. But I want to go to each one of you, and I want you to give me your top 5 predictions. These are not prophecies. But just 5 ideas that you think you're going to see in this upcoming year, 2023. Let's start with John Barr. John, have you got 5 ideas you can bring to the table there, brother?
Yeah. I think that the U.S. economy is going to collapse. The dollar is going to collapse eventually because there is no petrodollar anymore. So the way it's being propped up right now is that other countries have higher inflation than we do, so we're okay. But they're moving over to gold standard. In America, acts like the other half of the world doesn't exist. Yeah. They're just oblivious to it. They don't even know where to find Ukraine on the map, or Russia, or they don't know anything about any of that part of the world. I didn't either. That's why I went over there. So I think Medvedev, his projections are pretty good. All of them. It's a matter of when, because the European Union is done. NATO is done. United States is done because they got nothing. So here's another thing. They've designed this. They want this. They want to kill as many people as they can by however means they want in the Europe and the United States. So that's what they're going to do. And everybody trusts their government so much, they're going to allow it to happen until it's too late. So that's ongoing. And you say, well, why would anybody do that? Well, Klaus Schwab, go ask him. It's his plan. They're following his plan. But I guarantee you the Russians aren't following his plan, and neither are China or India or South America, not even Mexico. So we're going to be left out in the cold. The United States, nobody is going to come help us because they know that we're the ones that screwed everybody else over there. All of our allies know this. We've told them, our government has, whoever started this, you do what we say or we're going to sanction you. Now they're sanctioning me. They're threatening me. They're doing to us what they did to the Native Americans. In their youth, they've already turned Brzezinski's plan on the United States. This is how you fundamentally change America. Now you understand what that means. They want to bring this country down, period. And if they divide it up into several pieces, they don't care. They have no allegiance to the Constitution. Their oath is a joke. The flag doesn't mean anything. History doesn't mean anything. That's what they are. Now, another couple of things. I want to go back a minute if I can. When things started going south, the Brits started it. I was in Russia when they started it. And I was in Russia 12 years from 2006 to 2019. And they started it because it affected my visa. I always went to Russia on a business visa, just me. I just went over there and I'm the business guy. And it's my business, teaching English. They killed a guy that was a retired KGB guy in London with a nuclear pill. And they blamed it on Putin. They said, oh, this is one of Putin's guys. They didn't like each other, so he whacked him. The Brits whacked him. Everybody knows that, but that's not the narrative. Then the Brits changed the visa laws about Russians coming to Britain. So the Russians changed the visa laws about everybody coming from the West. That's me. Because the first 2 years I was in Russia, I was there 8 months and then 10 months. And after that, it was like 3 months and I had to leave. And 3 months out and then 3 months come back. That really irritated everybody that was doing business in Russia. Everybody. So they kept putting the screws down on this kind of stuff. That's where it started. And then when they overthrew the government in Ukraine in 2014, now here's another thing. The Russians have been planning for this for decades. They knew this is what the West is going to do.
Well, look at Khrushchev saying that he would take down the West without ever firing a shot.
Well, it's not Khrushchev.
Yeah.
It's the Nazis.
Oh, exactly.
I mean,
well, go back with that, not to bust in on your narrative there, John, but Steve brought up a whole bunch of stuff. If you follow the Nazi breadcrumb and go back through what we, knew as the Third Reich, that wasn't the beginning. It went all the way back to Babylon. And I would say through Nimrod, down through, but Ham totally encompassed whatever it was from the ancient writings that he found. And I would say went right back through the flood, back to the line of Cain.
Yeah. Well,
that knowledge, that ideology, that Baal worship, it never ended. It just transformed and it hid and it came out. And I think the Vatican, come on, look at that statue behind the Pope.
in the current world, it comes from the Western Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire. Where is that? That's in Rome. Who is in Rome? That is the common denominator of all this crap going on in the West.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was
Follow the
articulated
dots and the
first.
threads. It'll all go back to the Vatican. The
Yeah,
Russians know that. So what's going on is there's an everlasting war between the Western Empire and the Eastern Empire. They want to take down the Orthodox Church. They are anathema. They are excommunicated. They excommunicated each other. So this is still going on. Now, I want to touch a couple of points. Another one is go back real quick about the drones. What's going on with the drones? We do this kind of thing. We fly something into somebody else's airspace, and all their air defense radar lights up. All their air defense anti-aircraft systems turn on, and somewhere else up in the sky that nobody's looking at, whether it's a satellite or an RB-71 or some kind of spook plane, is mapping all these radar signatures. They're getting the frequencies and the locations. This is a preemptive of an invasion, because that's the first thing you take out to dominate the air. So they're playing war games.
So is your prediction then, John, that this mapping of this going in to bring the drones into Korea is a mapping that is in your opinion, a significant predicate to war on the very near horizon?
Yeah, and it might even be a war that we're going to act like we're going to attack. Maybe they'll send in some commandos and kill a few people and whack a few villages along the coastal area. I was over there when we thought they were going to invade in 1969 and then 70 when they took the Pueblo crew.
Oh yeah,
So,
the Pueblo, yeah.
Yeah, my unit went in over there twice. But other units, we were rotating every 6 months, ready to go hit them. And we had nukes.
Yeah.
The nukes were in Japan. We had them in Korea for that.
All right. Well, this is an alarming set of predictions here, John. I think, of course, your predictions have a high level of veracity and credibility here. Now, let me hear from Jessie. I want to get her points. Jessie, what have you got? And yeah, what are you seeing, at least, or willing to speculate on coming in the very near future?
Okay. So we didn't read your introduction, but your second paragraph really says it well. The influence of the World Economic Forum rose to the highest authority, and it's still accelerating. And the Davos group, still accelerating, appear to have assembled to a position of monopolistic control, not only in the markets, prices, supply chains, but all over cultures, nations, and societies. We've seen that 2020 onwards, and I really do see with the fiat currency and AI that is going to heighten and become something where it is completely exclusive possession or control. So I totally agree with that, and seeing that take over. And, you know, even with Musk, I suppose, compared to other people, in some ways, maybe he's more personable than other people. So he would be a good contender. We'll have to see how that plays out. What I do, more than a conviction, it is a conviction, rather the prediction that by 2023, at some point, we enter into the 3.5 year point that we're going into of the tribulation. And to me, that's important. So we have to warn of impending danger. One person here, if I can find the mark, I can't think who they are now, their names aren't here. The mark will come to all those who are not chosen as the elect. The book of Revelation says all those who are not written in a book from the foundation of the world will take the mark. And I believe next year also is a great testing of that. We've had the snake bite, that was part of the conditioning, but that doesn't mean that it's not the mark, because it's everything going towards it. So now we've got other areas that we're going to have to stand totally against and stand, you know, strong in, so that we continue not to have these things where it's what are we going to do when it says you can't buy or sell? It doesn't. We're in the free West. How could they do all that they tried to in one go? They couldn't. They had to implement it bit by bit. So conditioning, fake pandemics, scamdemics, that's going to continue. When we get to the fourth seal, then there will be a real plague, a real virus, you know.
Yeah, right. So you're predicting there is going to be you think there is going to be a significant bioweapon released in 2023?
Yeah, when the fourth seal comes about, because all of this, as John said, is to do with depopulation. You can't get away from it, Stephen. We don't want to say that,
Kill us.
but that's the heart of the matter. That's what it is. Georgia Guidestones and this, you know. So we've got to be as they say, wake up and smell the coffee and start to assemble, stand in the gap for those that repent, but for repentance. But what do you do when Christendom and others are in an apostate state? That's what we're having to contend.
Right. And not only in apostasy, but because of their in apostate state, they lose the ability for their eyes to see and their ears to hear. They lose rational capability. They lose the ability to reason. And so when you come to them, you say, well, what does Isaiah say? Let us reason together here. Let us reason together. But nobody's reasoning because they have lost the ability to understand cause and effect, action, reaction. They don't see it. They can't see it. That's
terrors. Follow that, Steve. I don't know if you had said that or if I'm just catching this, but I had watched, and I'm not going to name a name, but a prominent doctor. And he had given everyone that took the thingy 6 months to 5 years on the outside. That's it. It wasn't a maybe, it was a when. He was that positive. Right. But he listed as one of the symptoms, literally a symptom of the thing, that you would lose your ability to reason, where you would defend something that was blatantly wrong, you would now defend it. You didn't choose anymore. You just followed along with the stupidity, basically. Delusional type of stubbornness, let's say, to listen to anything besides your own formulated opinion. And that was part of the thing. So as Jess
have we
just
seen
said,
that? Have we seen
yes,
that?
we have. Because I have a lot of friends, and I'm talking, hardworking friends, great friends, business people, engineers, etc., that have taken the thing and they have changed. There is no doubt about that. Their attitude has changed. And I think that the next step in the evolution of this is going to be, you didn't, and we have become the enemy. Literally to the point of being hunted down. That it will turn to, we're the danger. And I think this is going to accelerate.
I mean, John Penn has said we should all be put in prison. Justin Trudeau is trying to label those who have not participated in the protocol as being criminally insane.
You walk around California,
all be in prison.
Go ahead and walk around California, and this is like over a year ago when all this was going on. You go ahead and try to walk somewhere in public without a mask. They came at you like a scene out of the living dead. Like, oh, come on. They were serious. They were totally serious.
I mean, I've seen people get beat up in Walmart and everything else because of the failure to wear the face diaper. And, it's as I told my friends, look, that face diaper is as effective in stopping the transmission of a virus as a chain link fence is in keeping out mosquitoes.
Well, now jump that one ahead. Let's just say that if, and I'm going to, no, I'm not going to change that. When, I'm going to say when we start seeing the side effects of this DNA manipulation, how effective has this thing been designed to now jump from the people that took the thing to the people that have not? Is this thing dangerous?
Yeah, the so-called shedding. Well, I mean, not only that shedding, but come on, Frank. What we've been talking about earlier, the 5G campaign, the frequencies.
That's honestly what I'm waiting on, Steve, is what can this 5G, once activated, and this can come through the atmosphere, but through your phone, through your television, through, anything that's responding to 5G. It's not like a radio beacon out there. It's going to come through the established communication regime. What exactly is that going to trigger? Because I keep going back to that one verse that says, as in the days of Noah.
But Frank, do you believe that in 2023, that at some point this 5G trigger is going to be pulled?
I think it has to be, Steve, only because if we, and I feel for a certainty that the horsies are out there. Now, the red horse specifically is war. There can't be any misinterpretation of that. That's war, and that's not going to be a little skirmish in Afghanistan or something. This is going to be, the whole world plunged into it again.
Right.
It may just be a short one. It may be a very limited one. but I think that that's also going to be the event that leads to the man of sin, the real Antichrist. Will you please step up? Oh, there he is. There's the Antichrist, except he's coming on as peace, peace, peace.
Right. Somebody
You know,
he's going to
got
be
the solutions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
because everybody loves him.
I'm going to wrap up our program tonight with my own prediction. Here's my own prediction. Yah is going to cover his remnant with his wings.
Mhm.
And he is going to deliver the people that are called by his name. And he's going to do miracles in our sight that are going to be beyond comprehension. And we're all going to stand up and say, hallelujah, praise Yah in the highest, for he is above all things. And he has looked down upon us with care, mercy, kindness, and love. May his name forever be praised. So with that, gentlemen, I want to thank you. Frank Germano, thank you, brother, for showing up on this program and getting all your technological problems solved. John Barr, brother, it's always great to hear from you. Thank you for bringing your wisdom to the table. And it's also good to hear from you. And I'm glad you got the technology issues solved. Jessie, who doesn't have any technology issues because she's younger than us. And so she doesn't have technology issues. Everybody knows young people don't have technology issues. So Jessie, I want to thank you so much, sister, for being such a wonderful backbone to the whole operation here. And so thanks for this program. And I want to thank all the subscribers. You guys have been fantastic. And remember, go ahead and feel free to comment, subscribe if you want to chat at our next program. And don't forget to spread it around if you'd like. Visit us at Sefer.net or at Sefer Academy. Okay. Blessings to you all. Ba Hashem Yahweh Sebaot Al Kadosh Echad Yashem.
Amen.
And we shall see you next week. Okay.
You guys rock.
Thanks.
Shovel.
Hello.
Shalom. Take care, guys.